I kveld har vi med oss en helt spesiell gjest, fordi Sujo John, han på Norges besøk, og vi fikk tid til å sitte ned midt I et travelt program for å høre historien hans. Sujo John, welcome.
Thank you.
So glad to meet with you and very thankful that you prioritized to come to little Norway. Because you're traveling the world these days, aren't you?
Yes, I get to travel. Actually, I've been here many times in Norway. My first time was 2004, and I've, in a very strange way, although I may go to many parts of the world, I've always had an amazing fascination for Norway. For truly, it's one of the most beautiful countries in the world with just beautiful people, and I've always been very blessed with every opportunity to come to this great nation.
Thank you, thank you. Wow, we received that. Thank you so much. You know, can you tell us a little bit about yourself? I mean, your upbringing. Where did it start?
Now, looking at me, you could tell I'm from the East. I'm from India. I grew up in India. I grew up in a city called Calcutta. And India is a country of now 1.3 billion people.
Wow, it's almost unbelievable.
It's a huge
country.
For a city. Yeah, it's incredible, the country and the city of Calcutta. And I was raised in a Christian home. And often people ask, that's interesting, India, predominantly Hindu nation, how come you come from a Christian background? And the way to explain that is my parents come from the southern part of India, and Christianity goes way back, Anna, I know you know this, 2,000 years. St. Thomas came to India, and so there's traces of Christianity very strong in the southern part of India that runs over 2,000 years. So my family has been Christian for over 2,000 years, but that doesn't mean that, you know, had a relationship with Jesus.
Yeah.
So as those watching us know it very clearly, you could have a Christian name, Christian tradition, that doesn't mean that you follow Jesus. So I had an encounter with Jesus at age 15, but then age 9 to age 15 was a very traumatic time in my life because when I was 9 years of age, I watched my sister die to leukemia. And as I watched her die, I was angry at God, and I couldn't understand if there is a loving God, why He allows death. Or when bad things happen, why does God not step in and save the day? So I turned my back on Christianity, and I felt like Christianity is just another way to get to heaven, because India, you have all these religions. So what's so different about Jesus? So till about 15 years of age, when a missionary, an American missionary, he's speaking and he says, Christianity is not a religion. And that's the first time I heard that. And he says, it's friendship with God of the universe. And Eastern philosophy will never give you an opportunity or never will tell you, Eastern philosophy can never say that God is love and then that you are loved by God. And secondly, it will never tell you that you can be a friend of God. And this man says, Christianity is about God reaching man, and around me in India is the attempts of men reaching God. And he says how completely opposite Christianity is. And that's what brought me into a knowledge of Jesus. And I understood that it's not about religion, but walking with Jesus is a way of life.
Yeah.
Has nothing to do with religion and tradition.
Yeah.
So from age 15 on, I've been walking with Jesus. And that's how I met the Lord.
Great. I mean, what a revelation. This is a revelation we very need. It's very needed in Norway as well. We have the same thinking, I think, that Jesus is religion.
Because of tradition,
Yeah.
what man has built, and people see tradition, and it's, if we cut off all the tradition and just show them Jesus, Jesus is appealing to people of all faith, of
Yeah.
all backgrounds. If they just meet Jesus, I have never, and I'm sure Anna, you and Stefan too, in your journey, I have never met anybody who's upset with Jesus.
That's so true.
People are upset with the church.
Yeah.
People are upset with people that talk about Jesus. But how can anybody be upset with Jesus? And so in my life, I always tell people, when they ask me, what church do you go to? I say, I follow Jesus. That's all I say. And if they ask me what denomination, I again say, I follow Jesus. And I think when you talk about Norway, I think with your history, I think that's something so important to if we elevate Jesus, that's all we need to do. But sometimes we elevate other things that has nothing to do with Jesus.
Yeah, it actually can cover him up for people so they do not see him. And it was a very, very dramatic shift in your life. 9/11, 2001 was a very, very special day in your life as well, in the life of, I mean, the history of the world. But for you?
You're right, Anna. I had just moved to America from India 6 months prior to the attacks of 9/11, and I started looking for work. I find work at the World Trade Center on the 81st floor of the North Tower, and my wife would work on the 71st floor of the South Tower. So my background is business. I was working for a telecommunications company. My wife was working for an accounting company. We both had great jobs, making great money, and my wife is 4 months pregnant when September 11, 2001 comes. The day, like you said, not only is an important day, but changed the way we do life, changed the way we travel, wars, and it's just been a complete shift, even in a spiritual way, across the world. Terrorist attacks, I mean, there have been terrorist attacks before 9/11, but the world thought those attacks were very isolated. But the world now begins to understand that there is a very radical threat for the free world, and especially the Western civilization. And so that realization of that shift started happening after 2001.
It really did. And I mean, we see it, like you say, we just have recent things that is happening around the world and bringing this up all the time.
Correct. And you've had your own terrorist attack here
we have.
in this country.
Yeah.
So yeah, it's a problem everywhere. But that is a day that God chose to shake me out of my comfort zone and put me on something that put me on a path that I never thought I would be. I thought I was wired for business, and I had a business plan. In fact, it's interesting. I wanted to start a data center. I had a business plan for it. I had a venture capitalist that was going to put the money, and I had all my plans, how to make money. You go to America and everyone talks about how do you retire young, and I thought that's what I was going to do. But then suddenly that day, God just completely changed my path and put me on this very path. And but for that day, maybe our paths would have never crossed, and I would never be on your program. So you're right, God changed the course of my life that day.
Totally. I mean, for me here, I know exactly where I was. I know exactly what I was doing. I know who I was with when this happened. I was just, watching it on television. That suddenly started to stream live where I was in a small little restaurant in Oslo. I was there with my small children, and I remember just looking at it, and I just knew the world, like you say, the world is different from now on. This is changing the world, the history, the course of the world. Everything is changing now. And to see those pictures of people jumping out of the building, you could see it, we could see it all over the world. And I mean, you were inside that everything that happened. Are you able to share some of with us?
Sure, absolutely.
How was that? I mean,
8:40 in the morning, what looked like a normal day suddenly changes, and I'm by the fax machine, sending some documents over to our office in Philadelphia when I hear this incredible explosion, and this was American flight number 11 that was flying from Boston to LA, carrying 10,000 gallons of jet fuel, flying at 440 miles an hour, comes crashing in. So the building shakes violently, fire just spreads, jet fuel, we could smell jet fuel, the heat is so intense, and we thought that building was going down. But nobody knew it was a big jet plane. We thought it was a small plane that had accidentally crashed into the World Trade Center. So as fire is spreading around us, the walls are collapsing, and one of our managers said, get on the floor, and we lied on the floor for a few minutes, and then we got up and we started crawling away, fighting our way through the fire, looking for a way to get out. Now the elevators were right in the middle of the towers. The jet fuel had come down the elevators, and balls of fire were shooting at that place, so we couldn't go through the elevators. So we looked for a stairwell, and we find that stairwell, and we start running down, and it wasn't too broad. It's good enough for us to be running down in 2 files, and we're running down, and thousands of people joining us on that stairwell. And I share this every time I share my story. People came from different parts of the world. It was a World Trade Center. There were people from all parts of the world. There were some of the most wealthiest people in the world. All kinds of people were in there. But there was one thing in common, Anna. The fear of death was written on everyone's face. Nobody knew what was going on. Time had stopped. It felt like it was eternity. But I'm running down, and I'm thinking about my wife. She would work on the 71st floor of the South Tower. and she's 4 months pregnant. And the kind of job she did, she worked with a company called Morgan Stanley. The stock market opens at 9, and every day she has to be at work at 8:40. And that day she had slept longer, and she said she'll soon see me in the towers. And she had actually called me. She said, I'm a few minutes away from the city. And so I said, sure. Usually we would meet for lunch or something because we worked in the same place, in the same buildings. And so I'm trying to reach my wife, can't reach her. I've borrowed the phones of all the people running down, but cell phones are not working. And that's when we hear another explosion, which many of you, your audience, have remember watching that day. This is the second plane crashing in the second tower. So we passed all the firemen, policemen, and we said, you guys are the real heroes. God be with you.
They were running up.
They were running up. And that's the incredible part of 9/11. When the worst form of evil came and attacked this country, there were people showing the goodness in men and women. They were living out what it said in the Bible, greater love has no man than he who lays down his life for his friend. And that's the amazing part of life. And if something like that, God forbid, would happen wherever your audience is, whether it's Oslo or any part of Norway or Sweden, where they're watching from, it's amazing when that everyday heroes just emerge. Deep within us, I think there is, that God has put that in us. And sometimes in those moments, the good also come out. As evil gets exhibited, there's an opportunity for good, and good always triumphs. Good always overcomes evil. Yeah. And I just saw the best of people coming out, these firemen going up with the gas cylinders and all the masks and all the equipment. But I had no idea that would be the last time America and the world would be seeing these faces of these men. And what's really sad is over the period of years, I've met those widows and I've met those children, whose husbands or their fathers raised up those towers. So if there's someone watching us and you serve in your military in your country, or fire, police, EMT, you're a first responder, thank you for being a hero for your community. So I continued my way down, and it took me an hour and 20 minutes. It felt like to come down all those flights. And I reached the level called the plaza. And the plaza was an open space, but that plaza was a space where people would gather during lunch and after work. But now it had become a place of death. Bodies and body parts of people that had jumped out of the building, people in the planes, the engine of the plane, one of the planes lying there burning. We were told, avoid this scene of death, go down one more level, down an escalator, get to the concourse level and get out. So I get to the concourse level, and that's when I see all these people being let out of the towers, and I'm thinking, let me go towards the south tower. What if my wife has not gone up? She might be there. So I'm walking towards the south tower, and in a way, that's when my story begins. The ground shakes. I thought it was a bomb. I feel I'm being sucked into some kind of vacuum. The glass is shattering. This is a south tower collapsing. So for the first time, I come to terms for the fact with death. And I'm reminded that I could die, and if I die, the question is, where am I going to go? And I had this peace that if I was going to die, I would go to heaven. And then there's 20 people with me. We were all huddled together, and a boldness comes upon me that I had never had before. And I felt the Lord saying, where are these people going without me? And I started crying out, Jesus, and I asked those 15, 20 people to call upon the name of the Lord. So we prayed for a few minutes, and then we scattered from that huddle. I'm lying there being buried in debris, and I feel someone pull me, and I began to pull him. And this was an FBI agent. He rescued me, and we held our hands together. We could not breathe. We were choking on all the soot and the ash, but something miraculous happened when we thought we were going to die. A red light flashing, penetrating all that smoke and the white stuff around us. It was a flashing light from an ambulance. So that leads us out of the pit. We get out. The man says, I got to go back, look for more people. The North Tower collapsed. This brave American died that day. So if you go to the memorial, you will see his name there. He's one of the many that died, and his story is a story of so many other heroes that stepped up, laying down their lives. So I'm out of the debris, but hours have passed, and I thought my wife was dead. I'm convinced she's gone. The towers don't exist anymore. And late that day, as I'm angry and confused, my cell phone rings, and it's my wife. She was late to work by 2 minutes. And my last working day, I signed up a life insurance policy. And my wife is falling asleep, and I try to wake her up and said, I got to talk about something. She's like, oh, let me go to sleep, we'll talk later. I said, no, we got to talk about something we've never talked about before. And she's like, what is it? I said, it's called death. And she's like, we're young, why are you talking about death? I said, well, there's a baby on the way. If something were to happen to me, I want to make sure that you guys are going to be fine. So I just signed up a life insurance policy today. This is the money you're going to get. This is who you need to call. This is the paperwork. We will never talk about again. Go to sleep. Next day was 9/11. So all those thoughts were running through her mind. The fact that we talked about death just a few hours before, and she's thinking the child she's carrying will never see the father, and she's trying to run into the building when a girl grabs her and says, you have to live for this child you're carrying, and pulls out of that place. And so she saw what you talked about earlier, what your viewers would also have seen, people jumping out of the building, and those bodies were literally landing around her. Very, very horrific things that she saw. So that's kind of our story, how God literally preserved 3 lives because my wife was pregnant with our child. And even that is a miraculous story. And I like sharing that story in a day and age where society seems to have lost its value and respect for life. So my wife was pregnant with our son, and our doctor, it was hard to connect with her gynecologist, and she says, the good news and the bad news. The good news is you both are young and you can still have babies. The bad news is, with everything that your wife has inhaled and what she has gone through, why don't we abort the baby? And I'm like, that is not an option. There's a heartbeat. They put the machine, the sonograph, and they're boom, boom. How could you talk about that? We're like, we don't care. As long as there's life, God's going to take care of it. The story of 9/11 is about 3,000 people that died that day. But interestingly, 3,000 people are aborted, children are aborted every day in America alone. And you can, if you add it up, the nation of the world. So of all the times, we're living in that time where it's getting worse, the valley of life. So I often talk about and he's an athletic 17-year-old child now, the fact that God spared 3 lives is our story of 9/11.
For en historie å sitte og høre på det her. And thank you so much for also bringing in this perspective, because right now in Norway this is a very, very special issue to us now, because it's like it's coming back up again in a very special way. The whole focus on abortion and what it is to take a life, and I really believe that what you share now is very important. Maybe someone watching is debating these things.
I just want to say something. If there's a woman watching this and you've done that, and you don't have to live in a life of guilt and shame. Jesus died for all of our sins. So whatever you've done, if you come to Jesus, and if you've been carrying that, if you come to Him, the Bible says He removes our transgressions as far as the east is from the west, and He will clean you up. You don't have to live one more day with any guilt. And that's the beauty of Jesus.
Yeah, thank you, Jesus.
Yeah, isn't it amazing, Anna? But if someone is thinking the other way, I want them to consider this. The real reason why, and this was something a friend of mine who's a pastor told me, it's just changed my life, changed the way I think about this issue. The real reason why you have all these voices taking a stand on abortion and being so anti-life is this. A friend explained to me that every child born comes into the world in the image of God, and Satan hates the image of God. So Satan wants to destroy the image of God on earth. And that's how it starts from. And that's why you see so much of money, so much of energy, and so much of fights. People are willing to, on this issue, people are willing to do anything and everything. But it's interesting, around the world, especially in America, this fight is getting stronger. More and more women are actually coming on the other side, are understanding that when you talk about a woman's right and reproductive rights, the woman has been shaped and fashioned to bear children. That's what's reproductive right. That's the most amazing reproductive right God has given to women. So no judgment. And I think that's also the problem with sometimes the way Christians may have brought about this issue. That's sometimes they say this in such a hateful way.
That's so true.
And we mix politics and all of this stuff. And that's not how this topic that is so private to many and so delicate should be addressed. It should be talked in grace, in love, and just say, if you've done that, don't, it's bad, but it's under the blood, so it's almost like you didn't do anything. God's taking care of it. That child is in heaven with Jesus. But this this next phases of your life, when God's given you that revelation, why don't you come on the right side of the problem and talk about life and promote the rights of life rather than the culture of death?
Strong, important words, especially when we talk about being condemned, that Jesus took the punishment on himself. And there is such a freedom. And the way we present what we stand for, when we stand for life, the way we do that, how important.
Correct.
That we really carry the presence of the Lord, and we present it the way that Jesus would have presented it. And seeing the way he was treating, the woman that was taken in sin, and how they wanted to stone her. Jesus is very different. Lay the stones down, and then he's also raising the woman up to dignity and lifting her up. Sujo, I know that when all these things happened to you and things totally changed for you, you also have a total new way of life. You're not in the business world anymore, are you?
No, God put it on my heart to just remind people that we are all humans on a short journey of earth, but with a capacity to live on forever and to prepare people for what we call eternity. That every human being will have one day face death, and at the end of death, the Bible says, is judgment, and then a place with Jesus or a place away and apart from him. And so we prepare so much for life on earth that's so short. And I thought about myself too, Anna, that I was preparing so much for life on earth so short. I'm not against it. We go get education, we plan like we are going to be here for 100 years. But we spend so much little thought about planning for life after this life, which is forever, unending. And so coming close to death changed my life, and I felt like God was putting me on a mission to challenge people about, hey, if death comes knocking at your door, if somebody were to watch this program and not wake up tomorrow, are they absolutely sure where they will go spend eternity? Heaven and hell are real places. Not too many people talk about these days, but they are real places. Every world religion talks about it. And it's interesting, the book of Ecclesiastes, it's one of the old ancient books in the Old Testament. It says God reveals eternity in the hearts of men. And in some cultures, like with Christianity, there is a full revelation of God. And in other cultures, there's a partial revelation of God. And in those partial revelation, there's part truth, not the full truth. Even in those religions and faith, they're talking about a heaven and hell. And then Jesus comes and says, let me lay it down straight what's been talked about in your culture, about how to get there. And that's why he never said a religion, he said, I am the way, because people have been searching how to go to God. And so I felt like God was putting me on this mission to tell people the message of the cross, which is, you come to me, I can give you a brand new start. You can have abundant life on this life on earth, but then really what you're doing is preparing yourself for a life after this life.
And this message, that you became an ambassador for this message from Jesus to the world, it has taken you to so many places. I mean, university campuses. Is it mainly the States where you have been, or?
No, I've traveled literally all over the world, whether it's Africa or Europe. I've been to many places in Europe or in Asia, but in the US, I felt a great calling to America, because I felt like that was a country that sent me a missionary, and I felt God was calling me to that nation as a missionary. So God has sent me to different people groups and nations with this message, and it doesn't matter what culture. We all have so many things uniquely in common with every human have. The fact that there is a heart, and there's a hole in every human heart, a God-shaped hole, and one day only God can fill that hole. And that's a simple message. And I don't come from a Christian tradition of where I've been to seminaries and Bible college and all of that. And I remember, when I was getting started, I said, God, it can't be me. I don't know how to preach. I don't know how to do all this stuff. And I felt the Lord saying, keep it simple. And that's the only way I know how to do it. And I just say, Christianity is so simple. And that's why Jesus said, suffer little children to me. So children sat in Jesus' meetings, but now we send our children away. Go do something else. But Jesus said, the greatest teacher said, no, bring them. And we're supposed to be simple. So in these last 17 years, I've tried in whatever way I can to share this simple message that the purpose of life on earth is to meet Jesus and to live with him forever. That's how simple it is, the message of the cross. So that's what I've been sharing with people around the world.
And it must be very special, I mean, for people to see you, because you survived 9/11, and you were in the midst of that death, like you said. You were facing death. And then to listen to you in the different university campuses and around the world is probably very different, because you don't usually meet people that have been that close to death and they are here with a message. So I can just also imagine how people really they stay attentive. So Sujo, I know also that you have taken on what can we say, a burden especially for girls and women. Can you share that with us? How did that happen? That I want you to tell us about what you're doing, but how did this happen with you, your wife, your family? How did you come from the World Trade Center, going through this process, walking through it, coming out of it, and then you chose to do what you're doing now?
Thank you, Anna. It's a great question. For me, I started speaking about Jesus, and then I realized that I've been guilty of this, and in our culture, we talk about Jesus instead of showing them what Jesus would do. What did Jesus do? He healed the sick, changed life stories in a very practical way. He took care of needs. But then sometimes we reduce the message of Jesus to just talk about him. And we do it on a Sunday morning, 1 hour. We build huge buildings and cathedrals, and we production services, not against all that, but what I'm trying to say, we've reduced Jesus to a 1 hour weekend affair. When walking with Jesus is supposed to be a lifestyle. And he said, follow me. What that means is go to the cradle of Christianity and see what Jesus did for people. Or the early Christians, even in Europe, what happened with Christianity? Why did it take off? The people the children, the people that the world was condemning, or when the plague came to Europe, the Christians were the ones that were serving. So even my own journey, God started reminding me that it's about the poor. The book of James says pure undefiled religion is taking care of widows and orphans. And God showed me one of the most darkest problems in the world. He took me to the red light districts of India to begin with, and I saw women kept in cells and cages. And when I first saw that,
it's almost unthinkable.
It's unthinkable because they're kept like no animals are kept in the world. If there are animals kept like that, there are people that will raise a lot of noise, and they will do anything and everything to stop that. And yet human beings are kept in cages and cells, 3 feet by 6 feet, locked up, forced to see 30 to 40 men every single night, kidnapped as 7, 8-year-olds, and their childhood stolen from them. And I saw this and I said, how could it be that in our times, with all the freedom that people have and all the conversations on justice, and yet this atrocity happens. So when I saw that, firstly, I became mad at men, my race. How could men do this to women? And secondly, I felt like, how about the followers of Jesus? How could we ignore a problem so big? I didn't know anything about the statistics on modern slavery, of how big the problem was. I straight went and saw this need. And I've always felt like when we look at the world, there's 2 ways how we can look at the world. Everybody looks at the world with natural eyes, like we are looking at each other right now. And those watching us are watching us. But then the followers of Jesus are to look at the world through our spiritual eyes. Our spiritual eyes is given by God, tuned by God, so that we see what He wants us to see. So we see the world like He sees the world. And when we see something like that, we're supposed to do something. Or why would He show us a need? And so I saw that, and I felt like maybe because of my speaking, I have a platform, I have friends in different parts of the world that I can ask them to help me solve this problem and maybe build a team of people that would take action. So we started this foundation called You Can Free Us, which is now in 5 countries. And
when did you start it?
It started in 2009, 2010, and it's all about going into these red light districts of the world, rescuing these girls, rehabilitating them. It's about almost 2 years that they stay with us. They get everything when they stay with us. They come with literally clothes on their back, and they have nothing when they come, when we rescue them. So we give them life skills training. We tell them you can chase after your dreams, whatever you want to do. So we have now girls that are doing nursing programs, working in hospitality, girls who could never read or write. Right now, as we do this program, there's 17 of our girls writing their 10th grade test, which is a big deal for them, and they're going to go in and go further with education. They all fall in love with the person that I talked about earlier, and they start walking the path that you and I walk. And the most exciting thing is some of them even get married. They were all in a place where they'd given up hope, and suddenly a fire comes upon them, and they have new dreams, and they begin to dream again. So it's been an amazing journey. But when we started You Can Free Us, I also felt God speak to me saying that this is going to be a platform, an entryway for a lot of people to find Jesus. Because if you look at the message of Jesus, people call themselves abolitionists, people that take a stand against social justice. But the message of Jesus was all about justice. The message of the gospel is about justice. The wages of sin is death, but the gift of God is eternal life. And so if you look at Christianity, if you look at the Western world, how the Western world advanced, how the common law in all our countries and how the judicial system, it's all based on the Christian model. Yes. And yet we have kind of lost that, I think. So it's important now, and I'm so grateful for not just our teams in different parts of the world, but there are several amazing organizations around the world now that has been birthed in the last 15 years. I think one of the oldest organizations that's in this fight against modern slavery is only 20 years old. So it's only the last 10 to 15, 20 years that people actually have been focusing on this problem. And yet this has grown. Just to give you a perspective of how big this problem is. So when we started in 2009, 10, it was a $32 billion industry. And now it's a $150 billion industry. It's affected every country, every city, and it's not just poorer segments of society are vulnerable. Kids of all backgrounds are vulnerable. With the technology, what's happening is, predators have a way to lure our kids through social media. So we're also launching a curriculum called Libertas, which is all about educating kids. Libertas.
Oh yeah.
It's all about educating kids all over the world.
Yeah.
We're just finishing that curriculum. And
Libertas.
Libertas. It's about raising a generation of boys that will respect on our women, but also wanting to educate girls around the world on how important it is to protect themselves, how not to compromise, that God has created them in a very unique way, and how predators could lure you. The same curriculum we have also taken into the prisons. We have a pilot program right now in 25 prisons in Poland going on, where in the prisons, the most vulnerable segments of society are also girls that don't have a father figure, their homes are not complete, sometimes they are in and out of prison because they get in trouble and predators go lure them. So we've taken a program into prisons in Poland where we're educating girls, teaching them about who they are, whose they are, that there is value in their life. And then when they come out, there are opportunities for them to now rewrite their life story due to something unique. So the mandate of what God has called us has grown from just sex trafficking. We're also launching into child labor, rescuing children. I know you better be aware of this. There's 150 million plus children involved in child slavery around the world.
So the numbers there.
It's staggering. 150 million of them. Some estimates says 170 million kids in child slavery. And what's interesting is we sometimes are not made aware, or sometimes some people may choose not to think about it, but the goods and services we consume, a lot of times children are behind it. And that's something that God has called us to do. So we're putting a team together right now, which is actually going to fight child slavery and rescue children from brick factories, from working in a silk factory, from working in very menial mining industries, to rescue them and give them hope. The children of the world, you and Stefan have such a heart for the youth of the world. And God is just breaking my heart for the children of the world. I have 3 children, and the children of the world, all of them need an opportunity to study, to dream big dreams. Their childhood should never be stolen from them. Often, with these 150 million kids, their childhood are stolen from them, and they're forced to work 16, 17, 18 long hours every single day, 7 days a week. And often, because of the hazardous conditions that these kids are working, many of them will not make it to adult life. And so that's another part of what we do. So our fight is we're in a dark world, but the hope is when we see these girls completely transformed, dreaming again, and wanting to do something amazing with their life. So I tell people I enjoy speaking, but if tomorrow God were to take away my speaking, I don't care about it anymore, because my mission and my journey now is how do you make the gospel seen? And before that, I was all about where am I speaking, what's my calendar look like, and I've been there, done that, and I've been guilty of trying to focus on that and ignoring what Jesus did. And so this last many years, probably I've been in walking with Jesus and sharing about Him the 17 years, but I feel more fulfilled since 2010, more than all the years of speaking that I've done. And because I feel like, and it's not about these big numbers, and when you go speak, you speak to thousands of people, but these are one life at a time, and to see the power of the gospel change them from darkness to light.
And that's probably the only way that we can change this, to see one by one, to see individuals, because it's so overwhelming. It's like, what can we do? Jeg vet ikke hva du opplever, du som sitter og hører på det her, men det er så overveldende tall som Sujo deler med oss. Det som foregår rundt i vår verden, det er så overveldende, at det er så stort, at problemet er så omfattende, at så mange er involvert, både jenter, kvinner, og han snakker om barn som arbeider timesvis under forferdelige forhold. Det er så mye å ta tak i, men det da å klare å gjøre sånn som han og mange andre gjør, det å klare å se en etter en, see one by one, must be the only way to leave the feeling of being totally overwhelmed, and then to go for the one and say, I can do something for one.
Trafficking or modern-day slavery is the fight of our generation. Every generation has had to deal with an evil. Today, it's modern-day slavery, where millions of people are kept as slaves in villages, cities, in about 161 countries around the world. This problem is prevalent in cities like New York City, Rio, Brazil, New Delhi, India, and Amsterdam. And perhaps there are victims even in your own city.
और मैं भी 30 साल की है, 18 साल में मेरा साथ ऐसा किसी ने लाके फंसाया.
When you go to the brothels of Mumbai, you're going to see darkness like you've never experienced before. You will see women kept in cells and cages. And often, these children stay with these women in these tiny cells. These cells are about 3 feet in width and about 6 to 7 feet in length. The darkness you will see in these brothels is something you've never seen before in your life. Your chest almost feels like it's collapsing. You feel so out of place. And then you realize that these are human beings that deserve an opportunity to live in freedom.
These girls come to our safe house, kidnapped, sold, beaten up, having no hope.
In 2010, I had the privilege of going to India with my 16-year-old daughter, and what we saw together in the brothels changed our lives. The devastation that we saw of these beautiful women who had been trafficked and abused and treated in ways that should not even be spoken aloud. These are the things that changed our lives forever. We wanted to be part of a solution of hope for those women who so deserved it. Because if it should not happen to my daughter, it should not happen to anyone's daughter.
उसके बाद में दूसरा एक लड़की को बेचने के लिए लेके आया, उनको भी बेचने के लिए लेके आया, उन्होंने भी ऐसा रोते रोते उसको मार मार के और दूसरा अलग ही जगह में बेच दिया वो लोग मेरा सामने का. फिर मैं और भी डर गई.
When you see the statistics of human trafficking, millions of people, those are just numbers. But we have had the privilege to see faces, and those faces represent women who deserve restoration and hope and healing and their journey of freedom. And we are so honored to be able to bring that to them. And we have seen their lives literally rewritten.
We're able to go in the red light districts and pull these girls out
we bring them to our safe house. And at our safe house, many of them begin to experience freedom for the very first time in their life or after a very, very long time. They receive love, emotional support, counseling, life skills. We get them jobs and help them re-enter society. What keeps us going at You Can Free Us? If stories of lives that's already been rewritten. We've seen our young girls graduate from high school, join colleges. Many of them give birth to babies. Some get remarried, and many re-enter society. And when one girl begins to leave our safe house, we know that is one life rescued. One life that will not be tormented or persecuted again. One life that will now live and breathe in freedom.
Even though the need of human trafficking can seem overwhelming, each one of us can have a part in these rescues and rehabilitations, because we need your support financially to make this happen for these beautiful women. We have opportunities to open multiple safe houses. Our safe house in India is at capacity, and with more funding means more women will have the opportunities that we've seen lived out in the beautiful women that we have now. We have opportunities in Poland and other countries, and we need your help. You can give a little or you can give a lot, but all of it goes to the cause of bringing hope and healing to these victims.
When you share this around in different parts of the world, you share it with state leaders, you share it with all kinds of people from different walks of life. What is the response you get? I mean, do we go into action, or do we hear and then we try to forget and go away?
We get different responses. First of all, a lot of people do not know how dark the problem is. And so the awareness is so key. If the more people are made aware of it, perhaps some good people will take a stand against evil. You know, we are in Europe right now. I often think of what Hitler did to Europe. A lot of people stayed quiet, and Hitler was able to do what he wants to do.
Yeah.
And I've been in those places, you know, where Hitler ran wild. And you go to the Holocaust museums of the world, and you think, why did that generation not do enough? And Anna, this is the problem of our times. 41 million people in slavery, more people in slavery now than the heights of the transatlantic slave trade. So once people are made aware, our hope is people will say, what can we do?
Yeah.
A lot of times men come to me and say, you know, let's go and let me go and I'll fight with those pimps and rescue them. I appreciate their heart, but it's very difficult how we do the rescue. There's a lot of planning that goes on. There's a lot of covert thing that goes on. You just cannot go and pull the girls out. It is a long process where our staff and our team are in the red light districts of the world, and we strategize and we pray, and then we wait for an opportunity to rescue them. So it's not easy, but what everybody can do is pray. I often tell people, can you pray 1 minute a day? Can you imagine if thousands of people, millions of the people, everybody prayed 1 minute a day, just 1 minute a day. You could be in your shower, you could be driving, just pray 1 minute a day for freedom, for captives of the world. We talk about Jesus' mission to set the captives free. Guess what? There's 41 million people captives, and the church cannot stay silent. And people watching this cannot stay silent. Now that you've heard about it, you have to do something. So prayer is the least that everybody could do. Pray for 1 minute for You Can Free Us, that's the name of our organization, or other great organizations in the world, or some people can start their own movements. You know, recently we were at an event in London, and it was actually put together by the UK government and the stock market, and they actually made a statement that there's only 370 organizations globally fighting modern day slavery. Think of it, 370 non-profits, that's it. And all those 370, not all of them are actually rescuing or rehabilitating. Some of them might be just on awareness. And the problem you're talking about, such a big problem. So there's some young people, and this is the justice generation.
Yes,
they are warriors for justice. So my hope and dream is that there would be young people watching this saying, let's do something, let's start something. So yeah, start in your city, start in your country, something that will take a stand. And if they want to know how to contact, how to start one, let them reach out to us. We'll teach them how to start a movement to fight modern day slavery. Or if they want to partner financially, it takes money and resources to fight this evil. People can help many of us, whether it's our organization or some other organization that's fighting modern slavery. So there are different ways that they can then give, but the biggest weapon is prayer. Because we wrestle not against flesh and blood, but principalities and powers of darkness. That is our fight. And so if people can commit to prayer, I think that'll go a long way.
So 1 minute of prayer every day from believers that will pray all around the world.
Yeah.
And when you speak to young people, you can sense immediately that this is very important, to be face to face with the young generation, because like you say, they are a justice generation. Det finns en sånn rettferdighetsgenerasjon som er rede til å stå opp for rettferdighet. Og man kjenner med en gang Sujo begynner å utfordre på det, at det er mange som ser på, som kan være med å gjøre noe. Så jeg har lyst til å spørre Sujo, when young people watch you now, and I mean, what are some of the actions that you see young people do around the world to bring awareness or to be part of this or to get involved with this? Can you share some of the things?
Yeah, what they could do, they could, if they're in a college, if they're in a school, they can start a small group on justice causes. And they could do events. They can do fundraising events. You know, we have in different parts of the world, we have events like Fashion for Freedom. We use fashion as a platform to tell the story.
How do you do that?
Oh, it's a fascinating thing. I can talk to you all day about Fashion for Freedom, what we use fashion. We've done fashion shows in different parts of the world with some of the biggest fashion designers and labels, and we tell the story of a trafficked girl. So you could do a fashion show on this theme. You could do what we do, Run for Freedom. You could do organize a 5K run or a 10K run or do athletic events around this. You can do Arts for Freedom. There's so many different things you could do to highlight the problem of modern slavery. So those are some of the events that they could do. Secondly, they could go on a trip and see. I have young people all over the world that say, can I come and work? I wish I could take them all. We don't have the capacity to take all the youth of the world in. But there are some that go and surf. They want to go on a long-term trip to one of the countries where this problem is and can help them. And when these young people go, many of them teach them English, they work along with these girls. They go to minister to them, but they get ministered to. But the biggest thing is actually some of them, especially the younger generation, there's an incredible spirit of social entrepreneurship that God has launched upon young people.
Yes.
So they want to be in the business, but they're not wanting to be in business just to make money. They want to
this is so good.
They want to actually come up with a business idea so they could fund these things. So whether it's a business idea, and there might be an idea that God is birthing within you, I would say go for it, launch it. Don't waste your life. There's an incredible potential. I tell people, living is risky. Everything is risky where we live. You know, we could be drinking a glass of water, it could be poison, who knows? Or you could be walking on the street and you could get hit by a drunk driver, no fault of yours. So if living is risky, why don't you be a risky radical and do something crazy, do some big damage to the kingdom of darkness and make your life count. So this generation is so unique. I'm just incredibly blown away by this generation because they come with such great ideas, because of so much information that they've received when they were young. They're so mature. You know, when we were young, we didn't have access to all this information that this generation have. So I'm incredibly encouraged, and I know you and Stefan feel the same way, that we want this next generation to go higher and do greater things than we've been able to do.
Yes.
So we want to give them our shoulders so that they could do greater exploits for this kingdom of darkness. So you're right, this it's a similar generation, whether it's America, Europe, or Asia. It's a unique generation, and who knows how much time we have on this earth. So this could be that generation that actually will have to correct all the wrongs of the world and make them right. And in whatever way we can help, we're glad to help them.
And it can be done.
Yes.
It can be done. Vi er så takknemlige for at Sujo John tok seg tid her nå til å snakke med oss, og du kjenner hvor viktig det er det han sier, og særlig når han utfordrer den unge generasjonen på mulighetene som er gitt, og at det finnes så mye kreativitet der ute, og så mye ønske om å stå opp for rettferdighet. Sujo, you will soon learn Norwegian probably as you travel, but we're very honored to have you on this program and to share with us. And every time when you speak to young people, you can just sense how much there is, how the potential that is out there is so great. And we're going to see it. It's going to change. History will change. And Sujo, in the very end here, we know that the way it changes is really to meet the King of righteousness, the only one that can make us righteous in His image. So you experienced Jesus as a 15-year-old, but then you came into a walk with Jesus. So that is so different. Det er det som vi invitert til alle sammen. We're invited to walk with Him.
Correct.
Amen. Takk for en god kveld her nå fra et studio vi fikk satt opp her sammen med Sujo John, som på gjennomreise gjennom Oslo. Og da vet du at du kan ta kontakt med Sujo John på, can you say again where we can contact you?
Yeah, they can contact us on youcanfree.us. You Can Free Us, so our website free.us.
.us.
Yeah.
Da kan du kontakte...
Or they can find us on social media by looking for You Can Free Us.
Yeah, great. Så følg nøye med på det som de gjør, og fortsett å ta tak, du som har hørt på det her, både kvinner, jenter som har hørt på det her. I know also when I say girls and women and start to speak to them, I know that you have such a special heart for the girls and the women, and also to raise young men to have an awareness of how to treat women and how to be real men. Would you close the program, just look into the camera and speak to young women and young men that are being raised in this time?
It would be an honor. I just want you to know, you already know this, you're special, there's only one like you, and God has a great plan for your life. And you might be coming from a background where you've probably never had a positive male figure in your life. There probably was never an earthly father that told you that you're precious and you're created with a unique purpose. But I want to tell you what the Heavenly Father wants to speak to you. You're precious, you're beautiful in God's eyes, and God is telling you, don't sell yourself short. Let nobody come and steal your joy or the dreams that God has planned for you. God has an amazing journey planned for you. But we live in a world that is not safe and it's very dark. And so I want to encourage all the young children, if you're a mother or dad watching this, be careful with what your children do with social media. And there are different tools that you can use to track what they do. My kids know this. We look into our cell phones of our children. And I want to encourage you parents in Europe, look into your cell phones of your kids. I tell my kids in our home, me and my wife, that we own the cell phones. We will look into your cell phones, and screens are for open spaces. But also parents, come on social media platforms that your kids are on to see what's going on. That's one. And to the boys, come on the right side of the problem. God has called men to be cherishers and protectors of women. And when you think of the atrocities in the world, I want you to think about the women in your life that you value the most. A mom, a sister, a grandmother, a teacher. There have been women in your life that have been positive role models. And when you look at them, the way you respect them and honor them, that's got to be the way you respect the other women that will one day come into your life and the women of the world. So I want to encourage you men, especially young boys, come, be known as a man that takes a stand for the cause that builds them. We do not live in a world where women and men are equal. I wish we could say that. And so I dream of a world, and even in the corporate world, where women will get paid as good as men. Unfortunately, it doesn't happen. Women can do almost everything better than men, the way women are wired. And I think if there are some men that will take a stand, and in our organization, there's only 2 other men on staff with me. All of them are women, and they're just amazing. And the work we get to do, it could not be not possible but for these women. So I'm glad that God allows me to play a small part in challenging men and women. Both of you are equal, creating the image of God for a unique thing that only you can do.
Thank you so much.
Thank you, Anna.
Thank you for coming.
Thank you
for taking this time with us.
Thank you.
God kveld videre til deg.